In 2016, the Los Angeles Rams traded multiple first-round picks for Jared Goff, and since then have yet to pick in the first round, trading away first-round pick after first-round pick to build a team that eventually won a Super Bowl. So let's talk about what all these trading first-round picks ended up amounting to, and, if they hadn't done this, what would they have ended up with? So let's do a retrospective on all of these trades and where it ended up as of right now. So first, let's go chronologically. So in 2016, they traded for the first overall pick in that draft, which they then selected Jared Goff. So technically, they picked in the first round, but that was the last time they picked in the first round in 2016, and they traded first-round picks to do it, because they were originally at pick 15. That pick ended up being used on Corey Coleman. They also traded multiple second-round picks in 2016, which ended up being used for Austin Johnson and Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry was originally a Rams pick, interestingly enough, and then a third-round pick, which was used on Sean Coleman. Also in 2017, there was a first and third round pick, which were used on Corey Davis and Jonnu Smith. Again, it was the fifth overall pick in 2017. If you remember, 2016 was the last Jeff Fisher year where they were not very good. People were wondering, man, did they just trade all this draft capital for a bust quarterback? Well, Goff ended up getting better, and it looked all right once McVay came. And again, how much did you lose? Derrick Henry, Corey Davis, Jonnu Smith, all good players. Henry clearly the best of the bunch, but you don't feel like it was a disastrous miss necessarily. Next, they traded for Brandin Cooks. Remember, they gave up a first-round pick to get Brandin Cooks from the Patriots. They also got a fourth-round pick back, which they used on Marquise Haynes. That's what's on the top of the screen. Then on the bottom of the screen, what the Patriots got, they got a first-round pick, Isaiah Wynn. I think showed flashes, but I don't think it's been a consistently good tackle or anything from the Patriots. So again, this is probably a win by the Rams, even if Cooks they ended up having to get rid of later on. Getting a couple years out of Cooks still is valuable. Then in 2019, this one's a bit of a technicality of them not having a first round pick, because technically they had the 31st overall pick coming off of a Super Bowl loss, and they just traded back with the Falcons. So okay, they technically traded a first round pick, but it wasn't a huge one. But, again, Falcons got Caleb McGarry and Marcus Green. The Rams, Jojuan Jenkins and also David Long. Definitely McGarry, probably the best player of the bunch. I think I would say the Falcons won that trade. But again, this one was not a massive one, more of a technicality than anything. The next one was a massive one. The Rams traded for Jalen Ramsey. Of course, you got to trade for Jalen Ramsey. His name has Rams in it. They gave up 2 first-round picks and a 4th-round pick, which the Jaguars really bungled with these picks. I mean, I like Travis Etienne as a player, but he is a running back. You feel pretty good about getting several elite years of cornerback play just for a running back, and K'Lavon Chaisson, who was just a bust at the edge rusher position. Also, Jordan Smith was involved. But really, I mean, the Etienne is the real player that the Rams would have liked to have, but I'm sure they much would have preferred having Jalen Ramsey, even if they don't have him anymore. And then finally, the most recent one, which actually hasn't been finished yet. There still is a first-round pick for this upcoming draft that, it's actually a important draft pick as well. I mean, it's a high up draft pick. It's the 6th overall, so that's the one all the way at the bottom. So there's still some value left on the table, but the Rams traded for Matt Stafford. They wanted an upgrade at the quarterback position, gave up 2 first-round picks and a 3rd-round pick to do it, had to make it in the future because they just didn't have their 2021 first-round pick, so they had to make 2 future first-rounders. But the Lions, they got Jared Goff, who's been a solid quarterback for them. They also have, the pick that was selected with the pick that the Rams traded away was Lewis Cine. It wasn't selected by the Lions, but I'm just talking about where the pick, what the picks ended up being. Afitu Melifonwu was the cornerback. They also was there. So again, some pieces, but for the Rams, you're saying, hey, this worked out pretty good for us. This was their overall haul they got from this, with the most important pieces being at the top of the list: the Brandin Cooks, Jalen Ramsey, Matt Stafford, and Jared Goff. What's interesting about this, though, is that when they won the Super Bowl, you could argue only 2 of these pieces were actually involved, because Goff was a part of the Stafford trade, but I think they could have made that without Jared Goff going the other way. So really, Ramsey and Stafford were the 2 pieces that ended up winning the Super Bowl. So it wasn't like they had a ton of players that won the Super Bowl for them, but they had enough. And again, they don't even come close to winning the Super Bowl without those 2 guys, so you feel pretty good about it, even if not every trade hit perfectly. But it's just an interesting thought experiment. What if the Rams didn't trade away those picks and selected the same players that whoever ended up with those picks ended up selecting? Well, who would they have? It is this laundry list of players. Also, side note, I accidentally wrote Caleb Von Chason's name twice there, but either way, you see that, the top of the list, those are kind of the most notable names, I think. A 6th overall pick in this upcoming draft could end up being the most important piece, and probably will be if that pick is used correctly. But Derrick Henry, obviously, they would have loved to have him, especially given their, running situation. We saw how good they were with Todd Gurley. Corey Davis, who, again, solid player, didn't live up to the draft capital, but a solid player. Jonnu Smith is solid. Caleb McGarry, Travis Etienne, Lewis Seam, we haven't seen play yet, but there's potential there. And then you have a lot of guys who maybe could have worked out and didn't, or maybe still will at a certain point work out. Again, these aren't in specific order of like best to worst. Just I wanted to put the most notable ones at the top. But as a whole, I mean, even looking at this right now, all of this list, I think you could argue like, let's say Jalen Ramsey is, 4 years younger. Would you rather have Jalen Ramsey or all of these players? It's a question. It really is, depending on how much you value cornerbacks, because of, how good he is. And especially when you throw like him and Stafford on, even if that's all they got, that really helped them win a Super Bowl, you'd still probably take that trade again if you're the Rams, and especially because they won a Super Bowl. So that goes without saying. Now, there's obvious other things at play here besides just the, listen, the Rams had to eat a lot of money on these trades as well. That doesn't get mentioned, but, cap space matters. And with that cap space, you could have gotten other players. So you wouldn't just have Derrick Henry and Corey Davis and Jonnu Smith. You would have had the extra money on top of it, all of that stuff. But still, I think what this lesson tells us is that trading for a sure thing is oftentimes worth it. Now, again, it's a little bit unfair because there were a couple of busts in there, right? Like Corey Davis, is it fair to call him a bust? I don't know. He's still a fine player, but totally wasn't worth a 5th overall pick. The Corey Coleman totally wasn't worth a 15th overall pick, and Caleb Von Chason totally wasn't worth a 1st-round pick. So part of what makes them look better is just some of these 1st-round picks were bust, but at the same time, I think, you could argue, well, what if they drafted well and didn't trade those picks? Would they be better off? Probably, but no team drafts perfectly. No team is perfect at that, and there is a legitimate way to win a Super Bowl by trading for your 1st-round picks for sure things. Although it's also worth mentioning, those didn't always work out. The Jared Goff trade, in hindsight, did it work out? I mean, it worked out. They won the trade. But, did they get what they wanted out of that? Not exactly. And same thing with the Brandin Cooks thing. Again, those things worked for a time. I would still say it worked out. It got them to a Super Bowl that they had a chance of winning. So I wouldn't say it didn't work out necessarily. But it wasn't amazing. And even the Matt Stafford and Jalen Ramsey thing, we saw that as great as it worked, neither of those 2 assets feel great right this second, but they were great in the Super Bowl run. And to me, I think that's the key thing to pay attention to is trading 1st-round picks for known quantities pretty much is, I think, is a smart move if you're trying to win a Super Bowl right now. Because I didn't even mention the Von Miller trade, because it wasn't a 1st-round pick. But, there's other moves you can do to get competitive right now. And it's, to me, something I think teams should try to do more frequently. If you were the Packers from a couple years ago, probably would have been smart to trade some 1st-round picks to get really good right now. Same thing with the Buccaneers. Teams do this in other sports all the time, like hockey and baseball. Teams should probably start doing it in the NFL. Is be a good way to maximize your championship window, because the window's shut pretty quickly anyways. If the Rams didn't make these trades, their window would have been shut now anyways, but at least because they made these trades, they were able to get a Super Bowl out of it. That's kind of my logic behind it. But that's what I think. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.